share with you guys a few things I think you should look at so that you can get a good deal on the bike, but also get a reliable one. The first thing you want to check out is realistically the condition of the frame, if you can see as much as you can. Depending on how much of the fairings are on there, you want to look for dents, kind of cracks, anything that may be rusting in certain areas that because it's been bent slightly, popped off some paint, so maybe it's rusting there. So I would look at the frame as best as I possibly could. Also look at the fairings to see if there's any missing bolts or anything that's cracked, and or any of the little spacers or washers that are supposed to be on the fairing bolts. Make sure that they're still there because they keep the fairings together properly and they keep them from breaking. And those things do fail and fall apart here and there, and you'll notice like if somebody takes good care or not of their motorcycle by small things like that. Something else to look at would be to examine the tires the best that you can. If this is your first motorcycle and you don't know anything about motorcycle tires, they generally don't last very long and they are quite expensive. So you need to at least make sure you got a little bit of tread on your way out. You want to make sure, you'll see these little wear marks right here on the tires. You want to make sure that they're not flush with the actual line in the tire so that you could, you know, potentially get to ride this bike for a little bit and get used to it before you're already dumping money into tires. Now this isn't something that's always easy to do, especially if you're a newer rider and or you don't have your motorcycle permit yet or your license. Some people aren't going to let you ride the motorcycle, but if you can and you have all that stuff, I definitely recommend riding the motorcycle, making sure at least it shifts properly, the brakes are safe, the throttle's working properly, it's not sticking on you or anything like that.
The gearbox feels really good. And it short shifts pretty decent. I could down flip it pretty decent. Short shifted alright. Yeah, I mean the gearbox is nice on this, and that slipper clutch is good.
You want to make sure that it is a decent feeling motorcycle for you before you buy it, and that everything is working proper when it comes to the engine, brakes, transmission, shifting, braking, throttle, clutch lever. Where's the clutch lever at? A lot of those things can be manipulated and kind of set up for you as you go, but at least it's a good indicator of whether or not the clutch is wearing out possibly, or if the brakes need to be bled, or if the brake pads are wearing out themselves. The next thing I would be looking at is how many miles are on this motorcycle, and does he have any form of maintenance repair documentation, receipts, or whatever that he actually went and got said maintenance services done, like the simple oil changes. When did he do them? Are they on time with at minimum the manufacturer recommendations? And then the next thing would be the most important one is the valve adjustment. If you're buying a motorcycle that has 15-ish thousand miles on it, for the most part, it probably is right there at a valve service. Those can be expensive, $600, $1,200, depending on where you go, or if you could do that form of service yourself. That's a very costly thing with motorcycles. So when you're looking at buying a used motorcycle and you're looking at that 15-ish thousand mile range, probably needs new brakes, probably needs new fluid in the brakes, it probably needs a valve adjustment. Has that person stayed up on their oil changes? It probably is on its first or second spark plugs replacement. So there's a lot of things that could have, should have happened and could potentially cost you a lot of money. So you may be getting an awesome deal on this inexpensive motorcycle, but yet there's a lot of things you're going to go pay for right off the bat when you first buy it. So those are things you should know. And if you're going to go check out the motorcycle, you've probably already researched which one it is. I would take the extra time to research the maintenance schedule of that motorcycle before you go talk to this individual, so that you could have a general idea of what you're going to spend. Just because you got a good deal on the bike doesn't mean you got a good deal tomorrow when you got to go do all this maintenance. So worthy thing to check into. So we already talked about brakes, so that's a good thing to look at too. Suspension is a big one. I would take the time to look at the forks, make sure there's no scratches on the silver part of the forks, make sure that those fork seals aren't leaking. That's a fairly costly replacement of all those components. Those are wearable items. They do fail and wear at some point. Those seals are going to fail on your suspension. Depends on how the person rides it. If this dude's a constant wheelie guy, those seals are pretty much jacked up and destroyed. You're probably going to have to be buying new seals soon. So that's something to work into. I would ask a little bit about whether or not they rode this thing on the track or not. If it's been ridden on the track, you know it's been ridden pretty damn hard. So that would be something I'd be a little curious about or cautious about too. A lot of motorcycles that are for the track, they're actually purpose built, and they can only actually ride for like 400 miles before you start rebuilding the entire engine. So you got to think, just because our motorcycles are capable of going long distances before they need all these valve adjustments and engine rebuilt kind of stuff done, that kind of stuff happens on like in a race scene considerably faster than you would on a normal bike riding it up and down the highways. So that's something to pay attention to. Was it a track bike? Because it's quite a bit more worn out than you would imagine. So there's just a few tips and tricks, a few things that if you kind of look into when buying a motorcycle, I'm hoping this will help you. I know I just got a great deal on this Yamaha R3. I got it for $1,800. Hell of a deal. But I went through this bike like crazy. There were a few things I didn't like about it, but I ended up haggling them down to $1,800, and I was pretty comfortable with the purchase and the maintenance things that need to be done to it. So that was, you know, something I'm willing to do, but it might not be something you're willing to do when you go buy a motorcycle. Buying a used motorcycle, knowing what's going to come up that you're going to have to pay for immediately, might be worth shifting towards a new motorcycle, depending on which one you're looking at. For me, I wouldn't go spend $3,000 to $4,000 on an R3 with, you know, 16,000 miles on it, because I know I'm gonna have to do all this service right up front. The one I got, I think, has like 10,000 miles on it, 11,000 miles on it. I've got that 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 miles before I got to do a valve adjustment and major stuff like that. So keep all these factors in mind. I hope this helps you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.